A child watched in horror as his teacher was grabbed by the head and lifted by a monster. His teacher, bloodied but resolute, looked at him and said, "Songyun, don't be afraid. Run." The monster crushed his teacher's head right in front of him. People were dying left and right. The monster reached out to grab Songyun by the head. When the collapse appeared in their world's skies, monsters rained down. Just as the monster was about to devour Songyun, a man wearing armor and wielding a greatsword slayed the beast, saving him. What Songyun saw that day was a miracle, a hero. He tried to become like his savior, fighting monsters. However, no matter how many he slew, he never got stronger. And worst of all, he was never able to protect anything. Present time. After slaying several dragons, Songyun felt it. He was getting old. His body ached, and he could barely stand. Another dragon appeared. Its massive jaws opened, ready to unleash destruction. Songyun had no dreams, no home, no family. His life had been a failure. My guy just wants to regress. Inside a dungeon called the Ancient Dragon's Nest, a man was slaying dragons. His name was Shin Sangyun, a player. Shin complained about working hard, even though he was almost 60 years old. He had been a swordsman for 30 years and ranked among his country's top 100. After killing the dragon, a reward appeared. It was a skill book. Shin's ability allowed him to eat artifacts and absorb their skills or stats. But before he could devour the skill book, a constellation appeared. Late bloomer model student, his contracted constellation. The constellation showered Shin with praise, commending him on his flawless execution and overall stellar performance. Shin was thankful to his constellation. The constellation's benefits, including doubled artifacts and titles at level 850 and tripled stats at level 900, were impressive but out of reach for Shin, who was currently at level 650. Now ready to eat the skill book, Shin used mana synchronization with an artifact to activate his devour artifact skill. But nothing happened. Frustrated, he threw the skill book away. The constellation apologized for not being able to help and even offered a diplomatic solution. But Shin's patience and youth were wearing thin, leaving him with little desire to reattempt the mana synchronization process. Even as the constellation apologized, Shin knew this misstep wasn't the constellation's fault. Instead, he was haunted by the regrets of his past, unable to let go of the dream of becoming the person he once envisioned as a child. But now he was old and tired, thinking, if only I were a little younger. The constellation was silent. Then it smiled. Deciding to help Shin one last time, the constellation cast a spell on him. A few days later, a young man was watching the news about dungeons while cleaning a dagger. Shin had experienced a wild time warp, waking up in his bed at 25 years old with the mind of a 55-year-old. Talk about a midlife crisis. Now he had all the time he needed to practice his artifact devouring skill. He started mana synchronization with the dagger and entered the gap of unconsciousness, the space where he could devour an artifact. Shin devoured the dagger, which transformed into a barbecue chicken. Still, it worked. He gained a tasty +2 agility boost and unlocked a secret skill called Demon Bash. The dagger disappeared after getting absorbed. Now armed with newfound agility and Demon Bash, Shin set out for the dungeon to try his luck as a player, leaving his porter days in the dust. As soon as he arrived, the porters eyed Shin with sharp gazes. When he showed up with a longsword, the party leader probably thought he was nuts. But after hearing about his YouTube deep dives, the team was surprisingly satisfied and jumped straight into the dungeon. As the party entered the dungeon, the captain gave Shin a skeptical side eye, wondering if this YouTube talk was some kind of prank, or if Shin actually believed online lessons could trump real-life experience. The captain smirked to himself, confident that once they were inside the orc dungeon, Shin would be in for a rude awakening. After all, YouTube videos were no match for real-life experience, right? In the orc dungeon, Shin's old porter boss fumed at the sudden change in Shin's attitude, muttering to himself that Shin had let his newfound status as a player go to his head. The party was having a field day with Shin, the newbie of the bunch, teasing him for thinking he could take on monsters head-on just because he watched some YouTube videos. But Shin was undaunted. When they encountered their first baddie, he asked if he could step up to the front lines. Then, one of the party members spotted an orc behind them. Shin was excited. This was his first battle after regressing. The party's tank stepped in to take the brunt of the attack, chastising Shin for being sluggish with the greatsword. As the tank berated Shin, an orc unleashed another strike, narrowly missing him, thanks to the quick thinking of the party leader, who bashed the creature's head with his shield. The leader blocked the orc's attack, countered with a strike to its chest, and the party cheered in celebration. Too soon. The orc, royally ticked off, swung its axe in a fit of rage. But the leader proved too fast, sidestepping the attack with ease. Despite being a level 50 player, the leader struggled to take down the orc. But after some fancy footwork and well-placed strikes, the beast finally bit the dust. The leader, with a nonchalant grin, checked on the team, acting like it was a walk in the park. Shin, however, had seen the struggle firsthand. He realized that even high-level players could have their work cut out for them. As the party caught their breath, a high orc squad ambushed them, joined by an armored orc. The captain, sweat dripping, knew they were outmatched and suggested they hightail it out of there. Better safe than sorry, right? Just as the team was ready to flee, Shin boldly volunteered to take on the high orc solo. The rest of the party pretty much lost their minds at his audacity, but Shin was already charging into battle like a wild man, leaving the captain speechless. Shin obliterated a high orc with a single swing, shocking his team. But Shin was unsatisfied. Maybe it was because he was still technically level 1? The remaining high orcs, blinded by fury, charged at him. But Shin, armed with his bag of tricks from the past, sliced through them like a boss. The armored orc, furious at the slaughter of its brethren, unleashed an attack. Shin, nimble as ever, dodged and countered, his party members gawking at his skills. Who knew level 1 could be this badass, right? Shin's agility allowed him to avoid the armored orc's strike, then countered, but his counterattack fell short due to the orc's tough hide. Looked like the orc wasn't going down without a fight. With a well-timed demon bash, Shin halted the orc's attack in its tracks, paralyzing it like a frozen statue. Then, with one clean slice, he lopped off the orc's head, its body falling at the team leader's feet. Stunned silence. Then, shocked murmurs. In a heartbeat, Shin had gone from an overlooked level 1 to a total orc-slaying badass, leaving the team slack-jawed and speechless. The team's jaws hit the floor. Even named players with years of experience didn't have stun skills this powerful. Everyone was left wondering, what kind of YouTube video could possibly train a guy to be this skilled with a greatsword? Shin noticed he had leveled up, gaining the title Fearless Immature Puppy, evasion +5, and 1 point for his efforts. Remembering the importance of luck from his past life, he invested his point in luck, knowing it would boost his hit and drop rates like crazy. The team leader turned to Shin, demanding to know where the heck he got his stun skill from. Not wanting to reveal his regression secret, Shin casually lied, claiming it came with his awakening. The leader wasn't buying it. He accused Shin of using a diamond rank weapon. Shin offered to let the leader inspect his sword, which turned out to be a regular old sword. The leader was shook. The team leader's envy boiled over, stewing in resentment after 2 years of dungeon runs without a decent skill. Suddenly, a party member alerted them to the appearance of the middle boss. The leader, snapping out of his daze, thanked Shin for handling the smaller fry. But he quickly warned him not to get too cocky, insisting that his stun skill wouldn't hold a candle to the demon orc's strength. A light bulb moment struck Shin. He remembered exactly why he joined this party: to snatch the demon orc's prized artifact for himself. The team leader and the others were flabbergasted as Shin brazenly requested to solo the boss. Shin's got his eye on the Crimson Stone, a treasure as slippery as a greased piglet. Fate's given him another chance to snag the artifact and its powerful delay skill. But first, he's got to wrangle with the demon orc standing guard like a rabid watchdog. But no one takes Shin seriously. The team leader, peeved by Shin's swagger, begrudgingly grants him a shot at the demon orc, if they fail. Shin waits expectantly as the leader confronts the boss, only to find himself sprawled on the floor moments later, wondering what hit him. The team leader struggles to stand, asking what happened. Shin can't believe the team leader and the others would just charge at the demon orc like that. One of the party members frantically asks the leader what to do. They'll die if they continue. The leader makes the call. They need to fall back. Shin, grinning, glances at the leader, silently signaling if he can solo the demon orc. The team leader can't believe Shin still wants to solo the demon orc. As the rest of the team pulls back, the leader reminds Shin that he was warned, telling him not to hold a grudge if he bites the big one. Shin grins, gripping his sword tight, reassuring the leader not to sweat it. The demon orc charges at Shin. With his past life experience, Shin parries the demon orc's attack with ease. The team leader and the others hear the clash of metal, wondering if Shin actually managed to deflect the orc's axe. The impact makes Shin's hand sting, but he taunts the demon orc, daring it to come at him again. Before the orc can land a hit, Shin slashes its side, activating Demon Bash. The team leader rushes back to the scene, unable to believe that Shin's skill worked on the middle boss, making it feel completely broken. The demon orc suddenly attacks again, but Shin blocks it just in time with his sword. That's when Shin remembers. The demon orc has a self-regeneration ability that lifts the stun effect. Shin readies himself as the demon orc rushes toward him. The team leader watches in shock as Shin exchanges blow after blow with the demon orc. Since Shin is still at a low level, he knows he has to focus everything on one point to slay the demon orc. Shin levels up twice and obtains the E-rank Demon Hunter title. As Shin catches his breath, he notices the team leader and the others walking toward him. Wanting to avoid an annoying situation, Shin shouts dramatically that he almost died and thanks the team leader for dealing a lot of damage to the demon orc. Then, Shin gives the leader a knowing look, subtly signaling him an opportunity to preserve his honor. The team leader's gaze shifts to the Crimson Stone, and he realizes exactly what Shin is hinting at. Without hesitation, the team leader orders the party to move on to the final boss. Now that everyone is gone, Shin can finally eat the Crimson Stone artifact. Shin enters the gap of unconsciousness, preparing to devour the artifact. This time, the artifact transforms into a Korean dish of cold, spicy noodles with vegetables and meat. Shin digs in, consuming the artifact-turned noodles, and his health and strength stats increase by +2. He also gains a new skill, Delay. Now, by combining Delay with Demon Bash, Shin can guarantee a 4-second stun. Shin can't believe it actually worked. The team leader approaches Shin, asking if they can talk. Realizing he needs to set aside his ego to complete the dungeon, the leader asks for Shin's help. Shin reminds the leader that their agreement still stands, and the leader agrees. One of the team members glares at Shin before announcing that they're ready to enter the boss room. As they step into the final boss room, the Orc Berserker's lair, Shin tells the leader to stick with him. The Orc Berserker charges at Shin, who blocks its attack and slashes its chest. The team leader watches in awe as Shin stands toe-to-toe with the monster. When the orc is stunned for 4 seconds, Shin shouts for the others to nuke it. They immediately take down the final boss with ease. Shin levels up twice, and his title rank increases to D rank, extending his status effect durations by 10%. He recalls that in his previous life, he never obtained titles. But even now, his achievements don't compare to Du Gyungsu, better known as Ghostblade, the title collector, and the complete sword. He's the strongest swordsman player in Korea, a monster who surpassed level 500 within 2 years after the player era began. Now that Shin has regressed, he plans to catch up to that man. The team leader calls Shin over, handing him the artifact from the Orc Berserker and thanking him for carrying the team. But the man who glared at Shin earlier watches in envy. Shin has stolen more credit from the team leader than he ever could, despite being the leader's loyal servant for so long. To him, it feels unfair. Seething, the man grabs his phone and makes a call. At Shin's house, he's ecstatic after receiving his pay from the raid. Now, it's time to devour the artifact he got from the team leader. The artifact's effect, Lighten, spends 1 mana per second to reduce the weight of all equipped artifacts to 1 gram. In his past life, Shin discovered that devouring artifacts removes their mana cost, but at a price. Still, Shin doesn't care about the penalty and begins mana synchronization. Meanwhile, at a club somewhere, the man who hates Shin is meeting with someone. He whispers about Shin's 4-second stun skill, trying to manipulate a gang into taking revenge for him. But the gang boss isn't impressed. With a swift slash, the boss cuts off the man's left ear, reminding him that they aren't his personal servants. But he'll listen, as much as the man's ear was worth. Shin headed to the training ground. Now that he has the passive skill Lightweight from the artifact, he can flip his greatsword like a feather. Checking his status screen, he realizes he needs to start grabbing the attention of a constellation. Since a player can only have 1 constellation, he wants one that complements his best stat, Luck. But for now, since his stats are still lacking, all he can do is train. After 3 days, Shin, exhausted from non-stop training, went to a solo player exclusive dungeon. He managed to acquire a new skill, Ambidextrous Sword Training, which increases his adaptability with all swords, except daggers and one-handed longswords. As he enters the dungeon, he senses someone following him. A few moments later, the gang trailing Shin enters. They notice Shin sitting and waiting for them. Shin tells them this dungeon is his spot. The gang boss unsheaths his sword, but Shin immediately notices their lack of a healer. They have a swordsman and an archer instead. A party specialized in hunting humans. They're called the Hyena Pack. In parties like theirs, the archer is the most annoying to deal with. Shin taunts them, telling them not to waste his time and attack all at once. The big guy takes the bait and charges at Shin. Inside the dungeon, your life is always on the line, there are no laws. You kill or be killed. With a single swing, Shin slices the big guy in half. The gangsters are in shock. The remaining members immediately get into position. The archer can't believe what he just saw. Shin defeated their level 100 tank with ease. He watches as Shin casually spins his greatsword, completely unfazed. The archer fires 2 arrows at Shin. But Shin throws his sword, shattering the arrows midair, and killing the archer instantly. Seeing Shin weaponless, the gang leader seizes the opportunity and orders an attack. But they miss. Shin dodges effortlessly, using a handstand on his sword to avoid their strikes. In one fluid motion, Shin grabs his sword and counters. The gang boss panics, grabbing one of his own subordinates and using him as a human shield. The gang leader retaliates and swings at Shin, but suddenly his body freezes. Demon Bash has been activated. The gang boss looks confused. How did he get stunned? Then it dawns on him. He didn't even realize it, but when he used his subordinate as a shield, Shin's blade had grazed his fingers. And that was enough. At that moment, he knew. He fucked up. Moments later, Shin, cleaning his sword, notices that the gang's weapons are all artifacts. Which means, they're up for grabs. Shin puts on his coat, wishing he could have avoided that situation. But considering the results, it was worth it. He also got a recovery ring from the big guy. Its effect, it cleanses any status abnormalities for 10 mana. Shin realizes that relying too much on his stun skill could have ended badly. He begins to devour the ring. Deeper into the dungeon, Shin starts hunting goblins. He's trying to obtain the Lucky Day title, which requires killing 500 monsters with his eyes closed. Shin waits for the monsters to attack, focusing on sensing the airflow and listening carefully. He can feel the movement of the monsters, like ripples on the water. As soon as a monster enters his attack range, Shin swings his sword, cutting it down. Suddenly, an arrow flies toward him. But since he's gotten used to his surroundings, he catches it with ease and snaps it in half. The goblin archer is stunned. Shin senses an army of goblins in front of him. The goblins foolishly charge, but with a few swift slashes, Shin cuts through them effortlessly, slicing through their ranks like a hot knife through butter. Shin levels up twice and quickly earns the D-rank Lucky Day title. Lucky Day effect. Plus 20 luck stats. Luck increases by 0.1 whenever the player defeats the same type of monster, max plus 10. Some goblins try to sneak up on Shin, but he spots them immediately. Taking the opportunity to raise his luck, he defeats them with ease. Moments later, Shin is ecstatic. His luck has increased by 30, thanks to the Lucky Day title. This stat boost is better than most platinum rank titles. Suddenly, a crack in space and time appears. As Shin turns around, he sees 3 constellations appearing before him. The Cleaner of the Fallen Dimension, the Pilgrim of Grand Space, and the Goddess of Luck. I think we all know who he's gonna pick. The Goddess of Luck was delighted and intrigued by Shin. The Cleaner of a Fallen Dimension gave a thumbs up to Shin's covert ferocity, a trait that perfectly aligned with the Cleaner's taste for ruthless, bloodthirsty types. The Pilgrim of Grand Space gazed upon Shin with curiosity, a constellation that only graced players with saintly potential. This constellation most likely appeared because of the Goddess of Luck. I mean, who wouldn't, right? The Goddess of Luck then made Shin an irresistible offer. Choose another constellation for now, and she'll guarantee him a contract with her in the future. Shin recalled a legendary archer named Hashimoto Yuki, whose god-tier accuracy and arrow regeneration were the stuff of legend. Dubbed the Archer of Miracles, his prowess came from dual contracts with constellations, including the fickle yet generous Goddess of Luck. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, Shin asked for more time to decide on a constellation. But the constellations weren't having it, urging him to pick one now and not sweat the small stuff. Shin recalled the sole constellation that had taken pity on him in his past life. Late Bloomer Model Student, a lifeline for Shin's failing career, but its power didn't manifest until he turned 55, due to its ridiculous requirements. But without him, he wouldn't have been able to turn back the hands of time, making it the ultimate wingman. This time around, Shin had options, but he had to choose wisely. Holy powers? Destruction? Or the seductive allure of Lady Luck? Without hesitation, Shin chose Luck, sealing his fate with the Goddess of Luck. A total of 15 constellations congratulated Shin on his new partnership, but 3 of them turned hostile, revealing their sour grapes. Shin was tickled pink to have caught the eye of so many. He waved them off and shook hands with the Goddess of Luck, who handed him a smorgasbord of supercharged skills. Shin reeled in awe at his new perks. 100% crit chance. Artifact upgrades to unique. Guaranteed artifact drops from bosses, no matter their rank. Broken doesn't even begin to describe these bonuses. Overcome with emotion, Shin shed a few happy tears. The Goddess of Luck then offered him the chance to pick another constellation, but Shin stayed loyal, proclaiming, "You're the only one for me." The goddess beamed, smitten by Shin's dedication, but I'm thinking he's still got his eye on Late Bloomer Model Student for a future contract. In the final boss room, Shin and the Goblin Lord went toe-to-toe as the Goddess of Luck watched, her gaze fixed and focused. Shin delivered a strong attack, but the Goblin Lord pushed him back, unleashing a status ailment attack that messed with Shin's motivation. The Goblin Lord swooped in for the kill, but was taken aback when Shin parried like a pro, thanks to his recovery skill that kicked the status ailment to the curb. Shin seized the moment, slicing the Goblin Lord's shoulder. Demon Bash activated, stunning the Goblin Lord for 2 seconds. Shin, quick as lightning, unleashed a flurry of strikes. each blow landing critical damage and extending the stunlock on the Goblin Lord. Shin emerges victorious against the Goblin Lord, gaining a level and the title Don't Touch Me to boot. Slumping over, exhausted but elated, he sighs in relief that the fight is finally over. The Goddess of Luck congratulates him on the win, calling him lucky. Shin, ever the modest warrior, insists it was all skill, but the goddess chuckles, reminding him that luck is a skill in itself, and she's glad to have chosen such a fortunate partner. As the goddess continues to ramble, Shin tunes her out and pumps up his luck stats. To his shock, they're already over 100. Shin then sets his sights on the Goblin Lord's shield, an artifact dropped by the fallen boss. Beaming, he shoots a grateful look at the goddess, silently thanking her for gifting him this artifact drop perk. Smiling, the goddess wraps him in a warm hug as he begins devouring the shield. With money woes aplenty, Shin heads to the quest organizer, begging for a level 100 mission. But the organizer, unimpressed, shuts him down. 2 hours earlier, having the worst luck with a broken car, Shin desperately needs cash, fast, to move to a safer place and upgrade his gear. With no other options, he turns to the player association to snag a quest. Back to the present. Shin insists on diving into a high-level dungeon, but the lady stands her ground, advising him to start small and work his way up. Shin, as stubborn as ever, won't listen. A battle of wills ensues. Out of the blue, the legendary Kim Miso strides in, a level 100 prodigy from the Eden Guild. Known as the Marksman of Devastation, she was the first to hit level 100 and the daughter of Eden Guild's majority shareholder. Born with the proverbial silver spoon, or rather, a diamond-encrusted one, Kim Miso, amused, asks why Shin is so dead set on a level 100 quest. His response, "Money, dear girl." She scoffs, saying that's more trouble than it's worth. Annoyed, Shin retorts, "High risk, high reward," seemingly confident. But little does Miso know, Shin still bears the scars of rejection from his past life, when she turned him away from her party. He claims there's no grudge, but is that really true? Miso smirks. She reminds him that solo players can't take quests. Oops. Shin completely forgot that the solo ban isn't lifted for another 4 years. Flustered, he mutters an apology and makes a beeline for the exit, until Miso calls out, inviting him to join her on a level 100 quest. The onlookers stare in disbelief, their jaws practically hitting the floor. Shin, suspicious as a cat at a dog party, asks Miso, "What's the catch?" She bats her eyelashes, innocently claiming she's just a good Samaritan. The quest lady looks as confused as a kangaroo in a swimsuit. Miso clarifies, "No conditions, but if you disappoint me, you'll pay." Shin gets it now, it's a test. If he fails, his player career goes up in flames. Unfazed, Shin meets Miso's gaze and smirks. "Let's roll." Now,